Hey there, LoCo fans. Welcome back to another edition of the most low quality, low budget podcast on Pennant Chase. I'm your humble host, Bregan Kelly 11, and as always, I am joined by my insightful and dashing colleague, H. Tennis. Tennis, you ready to talk some League of Controversy baseball on this fine Saturday evening?
Let's do it, BK. For a second, when you were introducing yourself there, I thought you were going to say something else, but glad we didn't take that turn this early in the day.
Absolutely not. It's always a pleasure to hear the sounds of your enchanting voice on the other end of the line.
Likewise, likewise.
Today, we're going to be exchanging our thoughts on each of the teams in the league headed into this 2026 season. And with that, we bring you a new segment called Love and Hate. We go down the line division by division and briefly touch on each of the teams, where we will then pick out one thing we love and one thing we hate about each. Since you guys have already read everything I have to say about these teams, this is mostly going to be Tennis speaking his mind about the teams, so don't hold me accountable for anything that he says. Now, don't you dare touch that dial. We'll be right back after this short message from our sponsor. Okay, I'm actually being told by our production manager that we are yet to lock down a sponsor, so I guess we'll just go ahead and
Aren't you the
jump right into
production
it.
manager?
So, without further ado, I bring you
How am
Love
I
and
getting paid?
Hate.
I feel like this happened last time. My
Uh,
paycheck has bounced the last two episodes, by the way. So I don't know why I'm still here. I might just leave.
that just seems like a problem with your bank. Have you tried contacting them?
They told me it's a problem with the check, but I'm
Yeah.
sure I'm sure you're paying in good faith.
Yeah, I think a lot of banks are untrustworthy, and maybe you should look into switching accounts. I don't. That doesn't seem like something I would do. So we're gonna go ahead and start off with the AL East, which is fitting because the first team we'll be talking about is the defending champion Tampa Bay Rays. The Rays once again have found themselves in a state of financial distress with a lack of a hands-on approach from GM Beansnap, who as of this moment has not logged in almost 2 weeks. What is there to love about this year's team?
Well, this core has just been there for years and years, and they continue to perform. I remember last year we talked about the two lows. I believe one's Lau and one's low, Nate and Brandon. Willie Adamas continues to hold down the fort. He's now playing third base, which is an interesting use of his defensive prowess. But you're allowed to do that when you're able to draft such a defensive stud in Sakamoto and bring him up right away. He's ready to play. He's supposed to save many many hits, +2 DWAR, and the core of this team, regardless of whatever Bean Snap's approach is still sound and should be able to carry them to the playoffs. Whether or not it's good enough for a division is going to be tough to say, but that's what I love about this team, the core.
Now they're actually projected to finish second this year to the Blue Jays in their over/under win total. This is very official, just hot off the press, fresh on my desk right now from Vegas Sportsbook. Has them at 86 and a half wins this year. You going to take the over or the under on this?
I'm going to take the over. I think that what I love about this team, the good pitching, the good lineup, is drastically outweighed. It does drastically outweigh what I hate about this team, which is their weak farm system. You don't see much in the pitching cupboards. They got two guys there, but looks like everyone they draft they need right away because of their owners' hands-off approach.
I, on the other hand, will be taking the under. And a lot of that is due to this next team we're going to talk about, the Toronto Blue Jays. They had a record of 89 and 73, but were swiftly bounced by the Indians in the wild card round. What's different about this year's team?
Well, like you mentioned, they've managed to replace Luke Voigt, who he was an okay first baseman. I traded him there up north of the border. He performed okay, but as you mentioned in your article, they bring in Matt Olson, who has just been a stud for multiple years, three-time All Star. Never had a career OPS single season OPS under 760, which is very impressive because I mean that's like what 320 on base and 400 so slugging. Career OPS of 866. I love that they brought him in. I love the top heavy hitters in this lineup: Guerrero, Biggio, Gurriel, all solid, as well as the top end of the rotation with Corky Marinero, who we liked last year, and we still love him this year.
Now at 87.5, like I said, they are projected to finish at top of the East this year. Do you have the over the under?
I feel like there's just so many teams in this division that I could give the lean to, but at this number, which is 87.5, I have to go with the under. I feel like the Blue Jays could easily hit the over. They have the high end talent, but I just see a few weaknesses here and there. Fifth starter place, back end of the bullpen, you know, could drop them below this mark. And I feel like they'll make the playoffs, but maybe a wild card spot. So I'm going to take the under.
Now, last year's third place finisher was the Baltimore Orioles, led by fearless leader Golden Kane. A lot of projections, including my own, have them as the team to beat in the East this year. What do you think?
I think that that is a bold claim, especially coming from a team that didn't finish under 500, didn't finish over 500 last year. But I'll tell you what I love about this team is the ownership group. Golden Kane Group has shown that they're willing to do whatever it takes to win, whether it be drafting the right guys, moving for players in the right spot. They, of course, have the amazing Abel Lee at second base. He can play all over. Literas is in center. He's not the greatest defender in the world, but like in terms of range, but he won't make an error out there. He won't misplace a throw. And I just feel like the rotation is steady throughout. That's what I love about this team. Now, what I dislike about this team is the bullpen. They brought in a bunch of rookies who didn't perform that well in spring training. Like you got Brigma, who had an ERA over 6 in spring training. You got Mayo, who performed better, even though his whip wasn't solid, and Kolseth was just like disastrous. You can't even throw him out there. In 13 innings, he gave up 15 runs. That's like over a run an inning. That's not going to cut it in this league. So you may say division favorites, but I say pump the brakes a little bit. Let's see what GC Group has in store for us, and maybe if they're making a run by the second half of the season, I'll start believing, or next year.
I do think that it was a bit of an awkward transition for the likes of Brigma and that young bullpen, but I do think that they'll mature as the year goes on, and I do see them hitting the over on this 85 win total.
85's tough, and as I mentioned, there are a lot of good teams in this division, and I will be taking the under once again. But I will not be surprised if the Orioles reach the over, and that makes it 3-for-3 in terms of disagreements between us two.
Well, I don't think anyone's surprised by that, Tennis. We're going to the fourth place team of last year in the AL East. Things in the Big Apple have been eerily quiet these last few years. The Yankees have been unable to stand out from the rest of the teams in the East. Will this year be any different?
Hard to say. What I love about this team is they have a couple of solid up the middle defenders. Torres, solid. Cash Taylor broke out a little bit last year, 886 OPS. And in spring training this year, he hit extremely well. He has a couple years left on his, 3 years left on his entry level contract, and looks to break out in a major, major way. Aaron Judge, of course, the senior citizen, leading the way up there. But what I hate is that there's just too many holes for those 3 guys to make up for. You don't really see another star in their lineup. I know Juan Hector Sandoval. He's had 2 good seasons, hit well in spring training, but you never know. Like, he's slow. He clogs up the bases. Even when he does get on base, it's a mess right there for them right there. They should put him in front of some home run hitters or something so they can drive him in. And the rotation is just, it's not going to cut it. I know they're young. They have a few young guys. Gibson looks the most promising. But the rest, the spring training numbers don't look great. And I think it's not going to be enough to compete in this tough division.
I do think that in the current state of their roster, they could go either way. Right now, Vegas has them at a 74.5. I took the under on that. I could very easily see them taking the over, depending on any number of moves that they could make, trading maybe some of those young guns and getting some more proven guys and try to make a push. They are absolutely in a position to go either way with this one.
I think I'm going to take the under there. They won 75 games last year, lost Urshela, LeMahieu, some other guys, and I don't see them being better.
I like the Yankees. The Red Sox have been utterly disappointing in recent years, which having the Yankees and the Red Sox suck is just bad for baseball. But it does appear that the Red Sox are fully committed and on their way to a rebuild. What do you think?
Well, I you say that, and then like they're bringing up Ray Parks, Braxton Smith. They want to see the young guys, but I mean, when you're in a rebuild, maybe other parallel universes, there may be commissioners who don't like the sort of thing where you like sort of manipulate service time, in order to kind of keep your young guys, let them grow, let them learn a little bit, and then bring them up when they're ready for the majors. But Yankees are like, I mean, excuse me, the Red Sox, I suppose, believe in the theory that these guys are the best that they're ever going to be. And Fantasy Tees has a mindset. They have some promising pieces there, but I don't know if it's enough either now or in the future. Like if you look at their minors, I guess they have Jerry Reed, who's a quality bullpen guy, Yuan Pierce, but the rest of it, it's not looking that pretty in terms of the rebuild. So I say if they are committing to the rebuild, they need to do a little bit better.
And it's always a possibility that after seeing how they perform at the beginning of the season, that maybe they will decide to send those guys back down and let them brew for a little bit longer. But
That
you
is
never
true.
really
That is
know.
true. Of course,
You,
there is
you
the
never know.
flexibility with the inning threshold.
It's never a bad idea to at least see what they're capable of, and if we are happen to be wrong about this team and they do perform right off the bat, then you keep them up. And if we're struggling like most of these outlets are saying that they will, then just go ahead and send them back down. No reason to force your hand there. Now the win total is set at 69.5. I went ahead and took the under on that one as well. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the bottom's going to fall off for this team. It's probably going to be an under.
Now, last year's AL Central winner White Sox were very, very busy in the offseason, turning over half of their lineup. Four of their nine starters were dealt and replaced with four new starters. Did these moves help or hurt their chances at repeating in 2026?
You look at some of the pieces they brought in. Simeon, he's a quality shortstop. He's one of the best defenders out there, especially in a new era where it's hard to have that much of an impact at the infield position in defense, along with some other guys like Seth Brown, quality outfielder. He's not going to blow you away. Austin Hayes, starting role, doesn't make errors in the outfield. And some of the back end pieces like Liam Hendricks, I know he's getting up there in age, but he's still solid. I think they did a fine job of turning over the roster and seeing if the kind of shifting the pieces around the core can help them get over the hump and maybe make the championship series or even the World Series this year.
Their win projection is set dead on 89, and I went ahead and took the under on that one.
89, I feel like that is a little bit inflated. I could see them getting to 90 wins. I just don't think it's that likely when they have the hitters, but ultimately what needs to propel them forward is the defense and the pitching. And although they have Chris Paddock, who has one more year before he's going to hit free agency, um, the defense is not going to be enough to get them over 89 wins. They could probably win the division, but I'm going to take the under.
Simeon can't save this defense. You heard it here. Now we're going to move along to the Indians. And after losing the division crown for the first time in league history, but still going further in the playoffs than Chicago, should Cleveland be favored to take the Central once again?
Yeah, I think so. You got a 42-year-old Justin Verlander on the absolutely craziest contract that any of us have ever seen that will pay him until he's 50, which he inked a few years ago. Shane Bieber, Aaron Savale, Zach Plesac round out an amazing, amazing top four. That's what I love about this team, along with their core, David Dahl, Francisco Lindor, Oscar Mercado. What I don't love is the bullpen and some of the hitters, including Howie Kendrick, who is apparently projected to start at first. No, excuse me. It is Max Muncy. Max Muncy will be playing out of position at first base. They got some interesting pieces there. But and obviously the bullpen is less of an issue when you have the quality starters who can go deep into games, deliver you wins 8-9 innings at a time. I think that I would favor them, to win the division right now, slightly over the White Sox, but it was a shocking division race last year, and maybe it'll be so again this year.
Now they're currently projected at 88.5 wins, which is just half of a win behind the White Sox. Now I don't think they're going to hit 88.5 on the nose. I do think that they will hit the over on that.
I think they will hit 88.5 on the nose, and let me tell you why, BK. I think that there's going to be a game in maybe late July, August. I'm sensing July, August. They're going to play. It's going to go 9 innings. They're going to keep playing a tie game, extra innings, 18 innings, 27 innings. And then, all of a sudden the player's going to fall asleep on the field. And then the commissioner will be called in. I don't know. You must be dozing off somewhere or, trying to bounce some checks off some people. And he'll be like, what am I supposed to do? And just call the game a tie. And then they'll get to 88.5 that way. What do you say about that?
Well, first of all, I think you'd be very surprised with how charitable and kind that the league's commissioner is. Now, I haven't met him personally, but I've heard a lot of stories about him just being a utmost standing citizen.
And second most, or is that the only point? Because that went right over my head.
It's okay. Because you know why it's okay? Because we are going to talk about the Royals now. And the Royals fell short of postseason play in 2025, but with a strong core returning, could this be the year that they jump into playoff mode?
I think so. Um, they they have some nice upgrades. I know they lost LeMay, who is a quality starting pitcher, but they tried to address their second base woes with Wilmer Flores, and Wilmer Flores, or is he even projected to play? I don't think he played in spring training actually. So they
No,
just
he's not currently set in their lineup, but could work his way in as a rotational guy with Scott West, perhaps, or
got it.
maybe even with Wilson Contreras at DH.
So what the Royals are banking on is that they had a good year of growth from their young guys, including their entire rotation. Um, Rick Stanley, they have a lot of former Padres here who they acquired in that big deal a few years ago. Blake Salazar looks like a stud. Stroman should not be in the rotation, but I believe he is slated to be in there at the fifth starter. They haven't really.
Stroman actually has just very weirdly solid seasons, and I actually haven't been able to figure out what it is about him
What is
that
yeah? He finished last year with a 3.85 ERA.
I
With
really,
he,
yeah, I would very much like to hate on Stroman
he's
for
like the
his
only
real stats, but
guy
it's
who
just
outperformed his real stats.
he's just
I mean
such a
that at that
ridiculous anomaly as a pitcher in the league. I mean, he has a career ERA of 4.30, and
it's
he
crazy.
he's had like pretty much the same real stat line this whole time. I don't know.
And
I'm
he
not
just
going to hate on him until
toiled
he proves me
away in
wrong.
Kansas City all these years. But yeah, no, I mean, I think this team could take a step forward. Like they did get some nice growth. Obviously, Cretella is a stud. He had a decent season last year. Didn't hit too well in spring training, but only one home run in 26 games. But if he finds that power stroke, look out.
84.5 is the line. Obviously, I'm Kansas City born and raised, big Royals fan, and I'm taking the over. I'm going to take the over on this one.
84.5 is very tough for me because that seems like you got the number. Not you, of course. It wouldn't be you, but I think I can afford to take the over on 84.5. I think the Royals have some spunk in them.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad that you're a Royals fan. Because the next team we're going to talk about is they don't tend to find themselves in the good graces in the eyes of the league, and that is the Tigers.
I feel like that could say more about the league than about this specific owner.
Although they have one of the more inept leaders in the game, the Tigers appear to be working their way up the ladder this year. Is this just dumb hype?
I think a lot of it is dumb hype. I mean, the Tigers saw themselves get cup of teas from a few of their young players last year, including Stiggins Collins, Talsmata Bell, and they appear to be full-time starters this year. Jack Coleman, of course, hit amazingly in his 12 games last year, and it could even be the best player in baseball in a few years. His first full season starts soon. Victor Robles, of course, still stabilizing the outfield out there. It's just been steady improvement for the Tigers since like 3-4 years ago. They tried to go for it. It failed miserably. They gave away a top 10 pick. They've just tried to incrementally improve. No big moves, just promote the young guys, and we'll see. I don't think the Tigers have ever gotten above 500 in the 6 seasons of this league.
Well, Vegas doesn't think it's all hype. And you know what? To be perfectly honest with you, I don't either. It's set at 87.5, and I've got the over. I think that the Tigers will emerge as the winners of the AL Central this year. Go ahead and mark that one down.
I think Pete Alonso and crew could really make a run this year, but I think as I have a vested interest in the Tigers, I feel like I'll say the under to protect my heart a little bit, so at least I get some cold hard cash if they do not win.
I'm pretty sure I overhyped you guys last year too, so it would not be the first time I was let down by a Detroit team. Now, we're going to go down to the basement, the cellar of the AL Central, and that's happens to be at the top point, geographically speaking, and that is Minnesota. Twins fans actually took to Twitter recently to express concern about recent first-round draftee Avinson Guerrieri, stating that management is not taking this rebuild seriously. Is there some truth to these complaints?
What pick did they grab him at? Because he I mean, I know he has a first round grade on him. He
I
looks
do believe he went number 4 or 5. I would
okay.
have to
Okay.
look back on that, but it was definitely looked at as a reach by most media outlets. Um,
Yeah,
I'm just trying to see here. Yes, he
you
did go
know,
number 4.
number four.
Number
Okay,
4. Yep.
you gotta. This ownership group definitely does things in their own way, and sometimes results come, sometimes they don't. With 60 wins last year, they brought in, you know, the few guys they drafted, a catcher who which catcher did they bring in? They did not bring
Uh,
in any catchers. They lost their star catcher. So
yes.
basically, the rotation. D Perry, I don't know if he wants out. I mean, I guess he wants out of the game because he only throws like 75 pitches a game. So he's not even able. The one quality starter is not even able to carry the team. Two quality relievers, but the rest of this team doesn't look too great. So we'll see what this ownership group does. But I don't know. Ford Sweaty finally getting a chance to shine. He ultimately failed in spring training. Will he deliver the hype that his namesake brought us?
The line's set at 64.5. Personally, I've got them finishing dead last in the AL, so as you can imagine, I will be taking the under on that number.
Yeah, the under I think is fair. Buxton does provide some defense, does provide some quality offense, but there's not too much like here. I think even though they had a good spring training, the under is fair.
Now we're going to head out to the AL West and start off with the Astros. Now, after covering these Astros for so long, we know that there's always one certainty that comes with this team. That's hitting bombs. With the fall of Oakland, are they now the team to beat in the AL?
I think just probabilistically, you saw a lot of good teams in the AL East. You saw a lot of good teams in the AL Central. It's going to be hard for Houston to win the AL because the AL seems so stacked right now. But um, Jordan Alvarez has one more year before he hits free agency. It seems like he's been in Houston forever and just mashed bombs. Pence continues to hit. Bregman, Correa, like all the names you know and love, or not love in this case. They're able to hit bombs, like you said, and I don't know if they are the favorite in the AL because I feel like their pitching is just a step behind what you need to be truly considered the favorite in the league. But they'll be exciting to watch for sure.
Well, as far as the odds makers are concerned, the Astros are actually an overwhelming favorite in as far as win total goes in the AL. And they've had their numbers set at at 96.5. And as you all know, I believe that this is a team that's going to go on and win 103 games. That's what my projection said. That's what I'm going to stand by it. I'm still going to take the over.
I think this is a good total. They may not be 5 or 6 wins better than some of the other teams in the AL or the Central. Just playing in this division, it's a little bit weaker. It probably helps pad a few more wins that are not necessarily there for the Central or East teams. I am going to take the under, but I could see this them getting to triple digits easily.
Yeah, the guys who come up with these numbers really know their stuff, don't you say?
Yeah, yeah. Considering they missed badly last year, I believe.
Well, I think we should look at the positives and maybe look at what they've done for us now. So
We could track the log loss or something, figure out how accurate the predictions are. We'll
yeah,
get back to them because
we
I'm
don't
sure
have
the
to.
person.
We don't have to. We don't have to if you don't want to. Sounds like it's just.
Oh yeah, no. I was just suggesting because you sounded like you wanted to give him
Well,
praise for some
yeah,
reason.
I just wouldn't want you to go through all that work and be
I appreciate
disappointed.
it. Thank
So
you. Thank you.
anyway, last year's Angels finished second in the division and nearly snatched the last wild card spot. Did they do enough in the offseason to fight off the up and coming teams in the AL like Baltimore, Detroit, Seattle?
So
And
as you
please try
mentioned,
not to speak
oop,
as a fan. Try not to speak as a fan because we really don't tolerate any favoritism in here.
yep, yep,
I know
yep,
you're an
yep.
Angels. I know you're an Angels fan, but I just want you to try to keep it in your pants.
All right, all right. As you mentioned in your article, they brought in a new catcher, Nitzer, who has played solid ball in his career for the Rockies for the most part. But he's a competent defensively. He's basically your average solid catcher. They brought in Brad Keller. I don't know if they did enough in order to challenge for the division, to challenge for the playoffs, to just get over that hump of missing the playoffs that they did last year. I feel like they are a step worse. Mike Trout, obviously, greatest player in the history of the game, and he looks to have another fantastic season. 3 MVPs already. Maybe he'll add a fourth one. But I just feel like the depth of this team isn't there. The second base position is weak. Third base is weak. Shortstop is weak. You got a lot of holes, and it's just it's not enough. You to be a playoff team, you need to round it out more.
Yeah, I don't dislike what they did in the offseason. I think that the signing of Brad Keller was very good, and it'll add something. But when you look at what all the teams around them in the AL have done, and then you look at what they did, it really is disappointing. And I'm going to take the under on this 81.5 line because of that.
I think that's a fair assessment. It's not like so much that they didn't do much; it's that everyone else did so much. And I think the under is fair. They're going to be slightly below 500. They're going to be close to 500, but the under.
After doubling their win total from 2024 to 2025, can we expect a 164 win season from Seattle this year? I mean, the math checks out.
From Seattle. You know, I feel like the mathematicians would have something to say about that, but I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I'm no math magician myself, but I do think that they will hit the over on the 85 and a half point, or excuse me, win margin that they've hit. They really didn't do a whole lot in the offseason. They excuse me, I'm tripping on my words. Usually you're the one who talks about this kind of stuff. But they did go out and they drafted the twin brother of number one overall pick Axton Cohen, his brother, relief pitcher Case Cohen. They spent their first round pick on him. They went and signed a veteran presence in Yasmani Grandal to kind of pair with this young clubhouse that they have. I do like them to. I don't think that they're going to take over the division this year, but I do think that they are making the necessary steps to be a playoff team.
Yeah, I think re-inking Kyle Lewis, obviously, to his big deal, is solid because that's one of your core stars, even if he is slower than a turtle on the base pass. Randall probably come in, mentor the young catcher, teach him how to call games, stuff like that, which obviously helps. They're nice pitchers. Dick Pole, Monte Odell, Keith Brown, all promising young starters for this team. I think I think they. I'm not as optimistic as you are. You had 89 wins. That seems a little bit high for me. I'm taking the under on the Vegas number, but they could make a playoff run, but it's just gonna be tough in this league.
That's fair. I When I went back and looked at some of my win projections, I compared it to last year's win totals, and I believe I had in this year's projection I had 18 teams finish 500 or better, and last year we had 16 teams finish 500 or better. It's just I do feel that there's probably a couple of teams who I'm overhyping a little bit. This could very well be one of them.
Interesting stat collection.
Now we're gonna move over to the Athletics, and it's really sad to talk about the Athletics when we remember what they were just a little bit over a year ago. And after 3 years of AL dominance, the A's started a premature rebuild effort last year. Always a wild card of a GM. What should we expect from Omar and Oakland this season?
Yeah, I think they're going to try to move some of their last pieces of that core. Bear Paw maybe there for the long haul because he's looking like a stud. He's just a quality catcher. Hits, he defends, he does it all. But other guys like Joey Gallo, who's been there since the start, mashing dingers, including 2024 when he had his amazing 62 home run campaign, 410 on base, matching his numbers back in Texas when people said it couldn't be done in Oakland. He did it in Oakland, but I mean, like, you look at these pitchers. Sean Manaea, he's getting up there in age. He's getting heavy contracts. He might be moved. Uh, these are just tough times in Oakland, and although they do have nice pieces like Mosby, um, who hasn't pitched well after his rookie season in 2023, it's going to be a long uphill battle back to the top where Oakland once was.
It's kind of hard for me to assess them. And the biggest issue for me is how they drafted. They drafted a 20-year-old first baseman with an F progression grade and a 24-year-old outfielder with an F progression grade. Now, all signs, according to that, would point to them trying to maybe scrap this rebuild that they started last year and maybe trying to build themselves back up as quickly as possible. I do think that if they decide to go the rebuild route, they're absolutely have the guys to deal off. I think guys like Matt Chapman, Joey Gallo, like you said, Sean Manaea will be gone, and they'll hold on to the guys like Marion Mosby and James Bearpaw. But it's just so weird looking at this roster and just looking at the moves they've made because I genuinely have no idea what they're going to do. I am banking on them just selling everything off, which is why I took the under on the 73.5 line. It sounds like you are also kind of falling into that category.
Yeah, I think the under is fair. It's going to be an uphill battle for them. Yeah.
Now we're going to move to the last team of the AL, and that is the Rangers. Trading away the number one pick for proven star Griffin Canning is what started this seemingly random win now push by Texas. But did they do enough this offseason to do any real damage in the AL?
I feel like Canning's one of those interesting pitchers. You look at him; he's had up and down years, including just 2023. That was, by all accounts, fantastic. 20 wins, 2.63 ERA, and 232 innings. Then he followed up with a terrible 2024, and he bounced back somewhat in 2025. And what are we going to get in 2026? I don't know if he's the type of pitcher, especially with only 2 years of control left, that you want to mortgage the top player in the draft class. I mean, this is just a very interesting moves by Texas, and they're adding other guys too, like Barrios, who's been a solid professional throughout his career. Trevor Story is one of the last remaining defensive shortstops. He comes over from 6 years in Boston, where he had some solid success, and I feel like this Texas team can make some noise. It's just the question of, like, they knew they could, but did they stop to think about whether they should in this environment? You know what I mean?
I do agree that Canning just isn't the guy that you want to trade away your future for, especially when you could have gotten a guy like Axton Cohen first overall like the Pirates did. I do like Cohen more in the long term, which is what I feel that Texas should have been looking towards. Canning to me seems like just too sporadic to rely on, though he did play very well as did the entire team in spring training. They did win the division in spring with a 19-9 record, but I just don't think that this team is equipped for 162 games. And I'm going to take the over on the 74.5, but I don't see them even flirting with the playoffs for very long.
Yeah, I think they're doing some interesting stuff, experimental treatment there with Johnny Oates and whatnot. And I feel like when you trade away the first overall pick and Vegas sets your line at 74, that should be a signal that you're doing something wrong. I mean, there's plenty of teams who believe that their internal numbers are better than those available publicly, but that's just a stark contrast. You need 14 more wins above the Vegas total to even get to 500. And although I do like the over here, it's just tough to see them making the playoffs.
Absolutely. I agree with that wholeheartedly. And we are now halfway through this, so everybody take a nice sigh of relief because we're almost over. I promise you won't have to listen to this much longer. We are going to go down to the NL over to the East, and it's kind of fitting once again. The first team we're talking about is the Mets, who are coming off a phenomenal season where they fell just short to a very stout Tampa team. What will they have to do to ensure that there will be no World Series hangover this year?
I think that they need to get the same type of performance from their stars, like Garrett Cole. You're combining Garrett Cole with Jacob DeGrom. Cole, of course, had a solid season last year, making a second All Star appearance since the pre 2020 days. But he needs to do better than that. Like he needs to make up for some of the championship hangover that they might have. DeGrom obviously had a tough year last year, 4.94 ERA, but they should get some strides forward from their other guys, Kyle Douglas, Larry Albosta. Excuse
Larry
me, I
Albosta.
am misreading my info guide here. But obviously, they hope that Benny the Jet will be able to live up to his hype. He's always been a highly touted prospect. He hasn't shown it in the majors yet. He had a good spring training showing, and some other quality hitters right there as well, including Yelich and the like. They just need to keep up their level. Like they know that they can perform well, and they need to show it on the field.
My only real, not even I wouldn't even call it a concern just because of, the state of their roster, but the only concern that I would have about this team as opposed to last year's team was losing Strasburg to the Cubs. I think that's going to take a little bit of a hit, but I do think that they will increase their win total from last year. The line is set at 92.5. I've got them hitting 95 wins this year.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that you look at some of their talent on the team and how they underperformed last year, like the pitchers. They bring in Rendon, who is still a solid hitter at this stage in his career, coming off a good year with Texas, and it's just you expect them to hit the over almost.
Now, after falling just short in game 163 and ultimately getting bounced by Philly in the wild card round, this year's Braves have a lot to prove. You don't want to fall behind to a team that you finished ahead of but lost to the year before. This is really going to be
Say
an
that three
interesting
times
year.
fast.
What do you have to say about the Braves?
I think the Braves, Acuna is obviously a big part of their success, and they still have him. They didn't do too much in the way of moves. Swapped out catchers. Pedro Severino isn't really like he doesn't move the needle much. Lost a reliever, but I mean they're largely returning the same core that they had last year, promoting perhaps a rookie Ray Fox who made 9 starts last year to varying degrees of success. They're going to bring him back, maybe trot him out there in the fifth spot of the rotation, and hopefully they get him out there quickly, turn it over to Dustin May and the guys in the pen, and that looks like a solid combo. For
That
that
is one
fifth,
thing that
yeah,
you can always count on with the Braves is if you've got a lead going into the seventh, good luck.
seventh,
Good
I'd
luck
say even
beating
like
them.
fifth or sixth, honestly, with number of innings Dustin May pitches. How many did he pitch last
That
year?
is, yeah, that's true. He
Yeah,
did have
199. He didn't break 200 for a second
God,
consecutive
man.
year, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's all moot. He's able to fire the innings when you need him.
Yeah, no, you're on the money right there. Yeah, after the fifth inning, if they've got a lead, good luck. Now I believe they won 92 games last year. The line is set at 87 and a half. I've got it at the slightest of unders with right at 87 wins.
I think although they did overperform last year, I don't think they overperformed to the degree of 5 wins. And I feel like just the unchanging state of the rotation of the team of the roster means that I think they'll be largely similar to how they were last year and just finish over, maybe sneak into the playoffs.
That's fair. With the dropping off of the Marlins, the Phillies didn't seem to get a whole lot better. But on the other hand, you got the whole NL West, which we'll get into later. That should make the NL a lot more interesting this year. We're going to keep it in the NL East for now. And with that, we will talk about the Phillies. And though they finished third last year, that didn't stop them from making some serious noise in the playoffs. Is another LCS appearance in the cards for them?
It's tough to see. They had high hopes for G-Man Park when they signed him overseas, but so far in 2 seasons, he's been, average. Like I would say, he hasn't been spectacular. I know that offense is high in the league right now, so 3.5 ERA that like he had in his rookie season is still considered solid. But in his second season, it ballooned up to 4, and they're looking for him to be the ace, and he's not. He's not like some of those other ace-like guys in the league where you think about him, like the Dodgers had Pirates, had him for years, the A's before they traded him all away. Like these are quality guys that you can count on to go out there and give you 8 innings, 2-run ball or less, and just get the job done when you need it. And I don't think Park is that guy at this stage in his career. Maybe he'll do better this year, third season in Major League Baseball, but right now he's not there, and the lineup isn't enough to propel them to success. So I just don't see them getting back to the postseason.
Personally, I'm a pretty big fan of the Phillies GM Brad Bush. He's honestly one of the best instances of doing more with less. He's always finding himself making deep playoff runs, even when his team doesn't look like all that much. So it's really hard for me to count the Phillies out of the playoffs. I actually have them tying the Braves for second place this year, 87 wins, which would give me the over on the 85 and a half that's been set by Vegas.
I think that is fair. I think they can look to surprise, but I'm going to take the under here. I think that's a safe thing to do.
Now we're going to talk about what looks to be the saddest team in all of baseball this year. This Marlins team is about as sad of a roster as you'll find. Did management pull the plug early on a promising team?
Maybe they just saw the state of the landscape of baseball and decided it was the right time to sell. Which I don't begrudge them for. Like if the windows line up, if it's a seller's market, you get what you can for the pieces. But if you look at the guys that they lost, and it's like crazy. It's like 2 rows deep. Lorenzo Cain, Mitsuo, Rojas, Hira, Jordan Yamamoto obviously was a big part of their rotation, as well as Jury LaValle, all sorts of guys. I mean, staples in Miami for years, and now they're gone. They're rolling with like, I mean, Brian Reynolds is still out there, but he's probably gonna get moved soon. Stephen Earl is leading the rotation. He's 24. Levy Tonks, 22. Freddie Simmons, 23. Wayne Romero, 22. It's not the Marlins team that you the past 5 years have grown accustomed to seeing.
Yeah, and I will say that I definitely screwed up by signing too many undrafted free agents because now I'm just forced to throw them all out there this year. So I've kind of put myself into even more of a hole than it would appear this year. The over under is set at 61 and a half. I'm going to take the under on that one. I projected them to win 60 games. That's with the roster at its current state. I think after Brian Reynolds is dealt, it'll drop down to even fewer wins than that.
Well, I think that's an under waiting to happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And now we're going to talk about the Nationals. And it's almost guaranteed that the Nats won't finish at the bottom of the East this year. Is that really something to hang your hat on? I mean, I will say that I've been very impressed with how King Dude, old Stephen Ballantyne, has been able to handle his cap situation. As you know, we've had, I want to say, four owners now come in. He's the fourth to come in and try to do something and just get get annoyed with the state of the roster, the state of their financial woes, and just leave the team. I have a lot. I have high hopes. I have high hopes for this ownership stint.
Yeah, I think that when you put it that way, like it is a success, considered a success to finish out of the cellar. Like they're gonna churn through some of their bigger contracts of the next few years. Alfaro only has 1 year left on his deal that for whatever reason he got. Juan Soto obviously is a stud, but he's making 16 million, which when you're cutting guys left and right and you have other bloated contracts and your payroll's down under 120, it's just you would love to pay guys like Soto, but it's just not feasible for this iteration of the Nationals, and maybe opening up the cap situation of the next few years will to keep him long term. And I consider this the past year or so a success from the Nationals, getting out from their financial woes, just figuring out what they're doing, and building together a solid core. Jordan Lawlar at shortstop looks to be could be a solid piece. Adam Goodman has been there for a few years now, 4 years, and he's pitched okay. Like you expect better from a pitcher who you thought would be one of the future core pieces of the rotation, but they still have some guys in the minors, Alex Donald, Hank Hartman, among others, who could contribute in the future.
Now, the expectations do seem to be high, at least high for a team that lost 103 games last year. They're currently looking at a 70.5 line, which would be 11.5 wins more than last season. I'm going to take the over on that one.
I'm going to take the under. I feel like the improvement of 13 wins, or excuse me, 15 wins in one season, 11 wins. I cannot do math. Is too
I mean, I
much.
just said it,
Yeah,
but
I don't listen to you on this, but I feel like Nationals are improving in the right direction. They're doing the right things, but it's just 70.5 is too big of a number.
now we're going to move to the NL Central and start off with the Pirates, who were the three-time defending champs, and the winners of 5 straight division titles. Is this the year that they fall off?
I think that's a tough question. Like, it depends on how you define as falling off, right? Because they traded with Canning, they got rid of Hod Skinner, Zach Britton. Their replacements, LeMay is a solid pitcher, but they inked him to a 3-year deal, which was a bit interesting. Does tail off mean like if they don't win 100 games, that you consider that tailing off? Do they need to not win the division for them to tail off? It's an open-ended question because this team just still has a lot of talent. The catchers are talented. Sean Murphy, Carson Kelly, both play. Nick Solak has developed into a fine player over his years and broken out in the past 2 seasons with Pittsburgh and looks to continue it in his 3rd season this year. Jeff McNeil, Ian Happ, of all names we've heard of the Pittsburgh dynasty. And of course, 2 pitchers who have been there since the very beginning. Giolito, now entering his 6th year in Pittsburgh. Mike Soroka, also entering his 6th year in Pittsburgh. As long as this core is here, it's tough to see them dropping off too much. But maybe others can give them a run for the money in the division.
Now they're an overwhelming favorite to take the NL yet again. They're over-under set at 105.5, which ever so slightly I'm going to take the under on.
Yeah, I think the under is fair here. They won 112 games last year, but it's tough.
Now we're going over to St. Louis, the smelly cousin of Kansas City. A highly touted rookie Mike Schick looks to be a full-time contributor this year, but can he deliver St. Louis back to the playoffs?
I just feel like this offense is weak compared to some of the others in the league. Mike Schick is solid. He got into one game last year, went 0 for 3 with a strikeout. Then they promptly sent him back down to the minors, but he's gonna start this year. Highly touted. The rotation is obviously led by Flaherty, Hedger, with some nice back end guys: David Allen, Ponce de Leon, Yermon, Rodon. quality all around, but is the offense going to be enough? Is the key question, and it starts with some of the veterans, Edmund, and goes all the way down through the rookies. It's going to be tough for them to get back to the playoffs. I believe in them, but who knows?
Now they're set at 81.5, which I think is one of the more intriguing numbers to play around with. I do have them hitting the over, but falling short of the playoffs at 83 wins. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the over is a good pick here. I think that they have high potential. I feel like if they make the playoffs, they're going to do it in style, and I like this team to take the over.
Now going over to Cincinnati, Ramon Laureano is a perennial all-star, but does he have the help to lead this team out of the NL dungeon under the guidance of a rookie GM?
I think it's going to be tough. They only won how many games last year? 76, so that's solid. But they also lost a ton of their veterans. George Springer, who had been there, uh, and some back end bullpen guys, Lorenzen Smith, and brought in Lamonte Wade Jr., who has been a solid piece for the past few years. Bounced around the Dodgers, Rockies, but he hasn't hit too well. Like his only season above 800 and 800 OPS was with the Rockies when he got 31 games and got benched. So I feel like it's going to be a tough load for Laureano to carry. He's obviously made the All Star team the last 2 years ever since a slow start to his career, and he looks very solid. But it's a tough road ahead.
Unfortunately, there's just not much you can do when you take over a team right at the start of spring training after the previous general manager left during the offseason and didn't make any moves. This is going to be an interesting year. We're going to find out what kind of GM Daniel is this year for sure.
Certainly.
And the over under is set at 73.5 because we don't know what to expect from this GM, from this team. I'm going to take the under.
I think so too. I think it's always better to take the under with unproven quantities, but with the caveat that if they do turn out to be stars, they could easily make us look foolish and blow us out of the water.
Egan and Egan, attorneys at law. Or it could be the names of Egan Kelly and Egan Kelly II, the GM of the Cubs and their now rookie and potential star center fielder. They look to lead the Cubs back to the playoffs with a studded prospect pool. How many of them are we going to see this year?
I think, like you said, for other teams, it depends on how the team's looking, right? If it looks like they're back in the rotation or back in the bullpen is struggling and they need some help midway and they're in playoff contention, like we could see Rodney Ware, we could see Callum Hill, Brandon Myers, all talented relievers who look to be quality pitchers in the league for years to come. Um, if they need first base help, which Ward Riley is solid, but he may struggle out of the gate. Taylor Jordan could be there to step up. Johnny Reynolds is just a quality outfielder in their system. He could be looking to take over one of the quarter outfield spots if they underperform around Egan Kelly. But ultimately, I feel like this team is a sneaky contender. Peyton Allison is just a solid third baseman. No way around it. Regardless of what the numbers say, he's just a solid dude. He's started for the past 2 seasons, and I know the numbers aren't there, but what he brings to this team, you can't even quantify. It's just impossible to.
And it seems like the odds makers are a little bit. Um, Actually, sorry, I was looking at the wrong number. Um, they're set at 80.5 wins, which would be a 13.5 win improvement upon last year. I do think that this team does have the tools to make the playoffs and maybe even a real push in the playoffs. But I have them at a slight over at 82 and 80.
Yeah, I think the over is fair, whether or not they make the playoffs. Getting over 500 is always a good start, and I see the Cubs being able to do that.
Now we're going to go to the Brewers, who acquired the likes of Keston Hira and Terrence Gore, who is always a threat. But with a weak defense around him, it just won't help this sad rotation. What do we like about this team?
I love Terrence Gore. I feel like he's always a threat on the bases. He may get one. He may only get on base once a game, but you always got to watch for him. It could be a 10-0 game and he'll be running. He's led the league in stolen bases many, many times, including over 100 in his time with the Dodgers in 2021. Continues to bag bases even as at his advanced age. Is just the best base stealer we've seen in the league in multiple years. And I know they don't have much speed around him, but kind of put some on base guys behind him, let them both reach, try the double steal. It works every single time. And Hero is just a solid hitter. Uh, with the Marlins, broke 1,000 OPS last year, and I worry about this a little bit because although he is a solid hitter, if he is going to play second base, as I think is projected at the moment, it's going to be tough for them to help that rotation. And Woodruff is solid, but he's a little bit past his prime. He hasn't had a season below 4.5 ERA. Maeda is obviously very old, doesn't pitch deep into games anymore, and the other guys are just looking to stay in the league at this point. So these are the types of teams that look to their defense to keep them in games, and I don't know if Milwaukee's defense can do that.
Now, their win total is set at a nice and clean 62. I do think that they could. I think the state of their roster right now, they could absolutely exceed that, but I have a hard time just trusting this organization as a whole. And for that, I'm going to take the under.
Same. I think the under is a safe bet here. I think they're in rebuild mode, which is fine because they have some nice pieces, good process, but it's just going to be hard to see them win in the year 2026.
Now, the Dodgers, who already had the oldest team in baseball prior to this year, got even older in the offseason, as you do. Can they outrun Father Time?
They're going to certainly try. They have their catcher, who they acquired from overseas through the international free agent market. He is signed to a 6-year deal at the age of 38, which is always fun to watch. Cody Bellinger continues to play great defense, continues to hit well. Verdugo rounds out the outfield. BB Fan will probably get some time as a pinch hitter. Excuse me, it looks like he is
He's actually
starting.
their leadoff hitter right now, I
That's
believe.
great. I mean, he has the speed, he has everything you want in a leadoff hitter. And of course, the rotation, like the usual suspects: Walker Bueller, Tony Gonsolin, Zach Gallen has been there, yeah, the whole time, all the 7 years, and it's they got older, but I don't know how much worse they got.
Yeah, I do think that this is still absolutely a team to be feared in the NL. They have the over-under set at 95.5. I'm going to take the under on that, and that is because of the next team we're going to talk about. But first, you have the over or the under.
I think the overs. I think I'm gonna take the over. It's pretty safe.
It is, yeah, it's a very safe over. I think only last year was the first time that they did not get triple digit wins since the league started. And like you said, got better in the offseason. No reason why they should not be over that 95.5 in total. Oh, I said under, didn't I?
Yes.
Well, there goes all of my credibility. In all fairness, I do have them at 94 wins, so it isn't too far off. But maybe I'm starting to second guess myself a little bit. Who knows? Now we're going to go on to the Rockies, who seem to be calling up a lot of their promising young guns. And what do you do when your team already boasts the best defense in the majors? Add some pop. Rookie Haven Fielder should add a much needed offensive boost to this year's team.
Yeah, I think when you have a team that's playing in Coors Field, you're going to pop some home runs. The defense is, of course, important because of the big park, but it's definitely important to add that pop, and Fielder does that. He hit 6 home runs in spring training. You want to see him hit a little bit more than that, but it still seems to be a fine start to his professional career. They have the base stealer, Ronald Jeremy, who hasn't gotten on base enough to steal as many bases as he wants, but hopefully that changes this year. Obviously, Nick Ahmed is solid at shortstop as well. Harrison Bader, Austin Riley in the outfield, and a solid rotation with Sim Lincoln, Juan Tayin, and Saquon, I believe. is is always solid, and they brought him in last offseason. He pitched okay, and he looks to be turning a corner in Colorado.
Now their total is set at 90.5. I'm taking the over on that one slightly. I do think that they will hit the 91 win mark this year and definitely challenge the Dodgers for NL West supremacy.
I think it's a season too early. I think I'm going to take the under here, but maybe next year you look up. They have Keegan Mayhew in the majors. They have Gage Keys in the majors. They have Oliver Earl in the majors, and you could be looking at a juggernaut here.
I do have a history of maybe blowing the wad a little bit early, so it's definitely possible that I am overhyping this Rockies team a year too early. We're going to move over to the Giants. Now, on the flip side of the Rockies, the Giants added some much needed defensive help to their lineup. Will it be enough to clinch their first postseason berth and fight with these top two teams in the West?
Ultimately, I don't know. It's going to be tough to say. I love this organization. I think it's well-run organization. Josh Bonds is a solid owner. A Michael Arroyo contract that he inked was very unprecedented when it was signed, but Arroyo is pitching okay. He had a solid season last year, pitched the most innings of his career, and was named to the second All-Star team of his career. And he's not even the number one guy because they have Sherman Bacon, who looks to take a step forward after four poor seasons to start his career. 3 out of 4 poor seasons, I should say. The bullpen looks to need a little bit of help, but I think that the Giants could make some noise in this division. I know it's very top heavy, but they have the talent to steal enough games, maybe clinch a wild card spot.
No, maybe this is once again another premature celebration, but I actually have Arroyo as my Cy Young pick for this year. He's had some horrible defenses behind him, and this year he's actually got something. He already has had a couple top 3 Cy Young finishes. I don't see any reason why he shouldn't be considered a front runner this year. And their over under is set at 86.5, which I am taking the over on. Though I think I might have actually had them barely missing out, or maybe they had them as the last wild card. I'll have to check on that. You guys probably know better than me because you actually read my stuff.
I'll take the over there too. I think it's a very solid team. They might miss the playoffs, but at least they'll make it close.
Now over to the Padres, our second to last team. Jay Slater and Richard Johnson, stud pitchers, have one more year before free agency. With no pitching help in the minors, can they make one last push for the postseason before this era is over?
I think it's gonna be tough. I think the hitters, Tatis continues to impress year after year, but he can't do it alone. You look at some of the other pieces around him. Dave Casey toiled in the minors for a while, and then look how that affected him. The first 2 years of his career, he didn't hit well. He finally broke out and was an all-star last year for the first time in his career, but it took a while. So, I mean, the Padres have an interesting way of managing their talent, and now they're going to try to maximize this last year of this young rotation core that they have kind of built together from the start. But ultimately, I don't know if it's enough. I think they might be looking at this in 3 years and saying, "How come this core didn't make the playoffs? How come this core didn't do a little bit better?" And the answer, of course, does have to do, in fact, with like the Dodgers and the fact that the domination, and it's just poor timing. But still, you figure that the Padres should have been able to do something at least one of those years.
Well, I do have them falling short of the playoffs again this year in this final year. I do have the over on their 78.5 win total line.
I think it's gonna be close. I think they just finished under 500. If they do hit the over, it'll be barely. I'm gonna take the under here, but yeah, it's close.
Which is very fair. Now, our very last team is the Arizona Diamondbacks. And they did try to make some moves in the offseason. They traded for Tim Anderson and Eloy Jimenez from the White Sox. They're actually sliding Anderson from shortstop over to first base. At least they were experimenting with it in spring training. And it's the expectation that they will keep that lineup going forward. I'm not seeing a whole lot that I really truly like about this team, to be honest.
Yeah, you like the experimentation is nice, especially when you're maybe rebuilding. You want to try out new things, and some of that stuff includes playing guys like Tim Anderson, who is an okay shortstop. He was better earlier in his career at first base, and you look at some of the guys they have. They don't have too many young guys in the majors right now that they're hoping for. Good things from Roberto Ozuna's in the last year of his contract. It's just a tough spot to be in as a Diamondbacks fan, and you just have to look at some of the young talent in the minors. Hayslip should be up soon. Lane Peavy is a young up and coming second base prospect, and some of their pitchers, including reliever ace Tim Fedorko, who we may or may not see this year, and some starters as well. And of course, Neil Ward. You can't discount Neil Ward, who should just be a complete stud when he makes it up to the majors. But I don't know if it's going to happen this year.
Yeah, this year just isn't the year for them. But as long as they continue drafting the way that they have, I really wouldn't change much about their drafting approach since Schultz come into the league. So I'm a fan of them. I think that they do have some promise coming up in the next few years. But as far as the major league roster goes, not much to see here for now. Which is why I'm going to go ahead and take the under on the 68.5.
Yeah, I think the under is fair too. I mean, the quality of this the major league team doesn't represent the organization as a whole, of course, because they do have good foundation, good process going there. But I feel like this number is too high. I feel like this is going to be one of the worst teams in baseball, and I'm going to take the under.
Well, that about wraps it all up for us today. I want to thank H Tennis, of course, for joining me and on short notice of what we were really doing at that. Kind of explain things on the fly because how sporadic things can be here in the League of Controversy. So thank you for coming out once again. Your check will be in the mail.
I look forward to it this time, like all others.
Well, my signature's on it, so it should work. That's my defense. Well, thank you guys once again for tuning in. Very much looking forward to another great season of LoCo baseball. Good night.
Good night.